What's up, YouTube? Welcome to Mitch Maeli Live. We're so grateful to have you here today. We've got some awesome stuff for you. We're going to be diving into velocity banking. We're going to show you how to pay off debt in a fraction of the time. Now, this is going to be a little more of a deep dive. So, if you need kind of the introduction to velocity banking, you're going to want to check out some of our YouTube videos on our YouTube channel, Flipping with Mitch Maeli, where we have some awesome content that's going to introduce you to the concept of velocity banking, using banking products in a smarter, better way by just simply doing some math and understanding the amount of interest you're paying. Tonight we're going to kind of take a more advanced approach to that, and we're going to talk about some of the reasons, some of the mechanics of why velocity banking works. So let's go ahead and dive into that now. Now, just a couple of announcements before we get started here. So we have our mastermind tomorrow night. That's an in-person mastermind. Anybody's invited. So if you're in the Utah area, if you're in northern Utah, or heck, if you want to travel to come see us, you're welcome to. We will be at the Top Equity Real Estate, now Real Estate Essentials brokerage in Murray at 7 p.m. So that's a live in person. We will not be streaming that event, but you're welcome to come. We're gonna cover some awesome stuff there as well. So with that said, we also have nationals coming up. We've got Renatus Nationals coming up. It is going to be an incredible event. We are flying real estate millionaires in from around the country to come train us, talk to us about how to be successful in any market. We've had a crazy market since mid 2022 through 2023. Now here we are at the beginning of 2024. Things are looking like they're going to soften up a little bit for us, like they're going to be getting better in the real estate market. We can get back to some of our traditional investing methods. But for those of you who were investing during 2023, we learned a ton. We made it through, so here we are. But the national, we're gonna be bringing people in. It's March 21st, March 22nd, and March 23rd. You're gonna want to grab your tickets soon because they're on sale now, but it's filling up fast. So make sure you save your spot. With that said, let's go ahead and let's dive into some velocity banking. So I am going to share my screen here, bring up the whiteboard. We're gonna have a whiteboard night. It's like back in the old days when I used to do all my trainings via whiteboard. Now I've got slideshows for everything, but we're gonna be doing some whiteboard stuff tonight. All right, couple of things that I want to talk about velocity banking. So just kind of a soft intro. You guys, all of you should be at least somewhat familiar with the strategy. Basically, the way that velocity banking works is it takes advantage of two things that actually the bank typically tries to use against us because we're uneducated, right? I mean, the most we got out of our finance classes was go use a checking account if you need to get into debt, go get a loan from the bank, that kind of basic stuff. But here's the thing. The way that the bank uses certain instruments really is counterproductive and counterintuitive when it comes to us as the consumer. And all it takes is asking the right questions, right? Understanding the mechanics of how those things work. And we're going to dive into those mechanics tonight. So first thing I want to talk about is how interest works. So what a lot of people don't understand is that not all interest rates are created equal. Right? When we talk about, when we're measuring distances, well, we've got a couple of systems that we can use. We've got the metric system, we've got the good old imperial system that we still use here in America. We can measure it in feet, we can measure it in meters, we can measure it in miles, we can measure it in kilometers, right? When we're talking about temperature, we've got the Celsius system, we've got the Fahrenheit system, right? Those they represent measurements of the same thing, right? With the imperial and the metric system, we're measuring distance. With the Celsius and Fahrenheit systems, we're measuring temperature. They're just calculated differently, and a lot of times they're used for different things. They're used in different regions. In the case of interest, there are actually three types of interest, and I want to talk about those. So the most expensive type of interest is compound interest. Now, most people aren't going to have compound interest loans or compound interest, debt. I will say if you have a student loan that's in deferment, that's probably the most common type of compound interest debt. Now, sometimes some of these payday loans, that you can get on the street corner. Some of those types of things, they're compound interest. We kind of know going into that we're going to get taken advantage of. So we want to try to avoid compound interest as much as possible. Now, the second most expensive type of interest is called amortized interest. Now, if you've seen one of our workshops where we introduced velocity banking, if you watch one of the videos where we've introduced velocity banking, we talk a lot about this. So we're going to kind of take a different approach tonight. But just as kind of to set this up, amortized interest is a much more expensive kind of interest than the type of interest we were taught to calculate in school. In grade school, we learned about simple interest. Now, simple interest is the least expensive form of interest that's calculated by the bank, right? So there are certain ways we're gonna kind of ignore compound tonight. We're gonna talk about, because they're more common, we're gonna talk about amortized, and we're gonna talk about simple. Now, there's a couple of ways that you can tell if you have an amortized debt versus if you have simple interest debt. So one of the ways is how we refer to them. So amortized debt, we call them loans. Car loans, student loans. Now, I know I mentioned, some student loans can be compound if you're in deferment. If you're not in deferment and you're making payments, and those payments are more than your calculated interest every month, then it's amortized debt that you're paying, right? So that student loan will be, so anything called a loan, student loan, mortgage loan, car loan, toy loan, boat loan, whatever, anything called a loan, personal loan, any of those things. Another way to tell is if your relationship with that loan is one directional. So here's what I mean by one directional. And maybe it might be better to do a little compare and contrast. So let's talk about simple interest for just a second. I'll come back to the directionality. So anything simple interest is called a line of credit. Okay. So this can be a little bit deceiving because actually a lot of times what we refer to as a line of credit is, or what is a line of credit, we refer to as a credit card. So I can tell you right now, if you have a lending instrument that has some sort of credit card attached to it, a piece of plastic, you've got a line of credit. And the reason you need this piece of plastic is because the relationship with it is two directional. You can put money in and you can take money out at will. Now, this particular card that I'm holding up, this is a HELOC card. So this is attached to my house. So it's a home equity line of credit, right? Now I've got other cards. I can use other examples here. I've got other cards that, for example, are unsecured lines of credit, right? This is an unsecured line of credit. This is what we think of when you hear the word credit card. You go apply for it. The only thing you're using as collateral is your credit score, right? So if you don't pay, they don't foreclose on anything. The only thing that they affect is your credit score. So when you hear the word credit card, usually this is the type of line of credit. It's actually called an unsecured line of credit. Unsecured because it's not collateralized by anything, right? So you tend to get different kinds of limits, right? HELOCs, you can get $1 million line of credit, right? You're not going to get $1 million credit card. Few people might, but most of us won't, right? An unsecured line of credit, you're going to have, anywhere from $500 to $5,000 to $20,000, $25,000. I've kind of seen in that range, but they work the same. I can take even my, $750,000 HELOC. I can take this card with a $750,000 limit down to the bank, down to the gas station, and I can swipe it and I can buy some gas. I can take it to the grocery store. I can swipe it and I can buy some groceries, right? So I can also pay down the balance at any time. So this is what I mean by, money in and money out. Like it's a two-directional relationship, or a revolving, as the bank refers to it, a revolving relationship. So in contrast, going back to amortized debt, for example, your car loan, you can't swipe your car loan at the gas pump and buy gas. So therefore, we can put money in, we can make our payment, but we can't take money back out easily. You can, but it would require you to refinance, right? And so, in our introductory classes, we go over amortization tables and all those things. The bank uses that against us. I'll tell you, one of the things that I have a lot of my students do is if you don't want to sleep tonight, calculate, take your mortgage payment or any loan payment, times it by the number of months you have left on that payment, and compare it to what you think you owe, right? And you'll see that in a lot of cases, especially with like mortgages, even 3% mortgages are like double what you thought you owe. 3% is not double. That's not, but we were taught simple interest. So that gets convoluted in the process there. Because amortized, they use way more complicated math to be able to tell you that they're charging you 3%, but really they're going to end up collecting double. And so, amortized interest, the bank, there's a psychology that the bank wants us to have. They want us to feel safe in loans for some reason, and we're going to break them all down tonight. And for those of you who have joined us on Zoom, I encourage you to come out and challenge this, right? The bank makes us feel safer when we have a mortgage on our home versus a home equity line of credit. We can't explain why. We just think it's safer, right? In all actuality, it is safer for the bank. With a mortgage, if you don't make your payment for a few months, the bank can come take your house. Now, that's true of a line of credit too, but a line of credit's liquid. If you've got a situation where you lose your income for a few months, you can pull some cash out of that line of credit and then use that cash to pay your payment. It floats itself for a few months. That's safer for you. Now, yes, that debt will continue to go up, but we're usually not in lifelong, rainy days. Usually rainy days can last anywhere from a few days to, a few months. And then we get back to it and we start making money again and we pay that down. But if we have that flexibility, the bank's not foreclosing on our house. They're not affecting our credit, right? So it really takes a deep level of understanding to know that, loans are safer for the bank. Lines are safer for us. Lines are also simple interest. They're a less expensive form of interest. So anything one directional is a loan, anything and amortized interest, anything revolving is a line of credit and simple interest. So we're going to use that principle tonight, and we're going to couple it with another principle that I want to go over. Now, I do touch on this slightly in our intro stuff, but I want to dive a little more deeply into it. Because cash segmentation is something that keeps us feeling broke. So cash segmentation is and I'm going to write that down. So cash segmentation is, I can't talk and write at the same time. I'll end up segmenting. I told you. Cash segmentation. So cash segmentation is a strategy that the bank uses against us to make us feel like we have less money than we actually have. Okay? And you've all heard me use this analogy, right? If our income is represented by a pie, like food, a pie, right? If we use the analogy of a pie, if our income is a pie and you're the only one eating that pie, that's a lot of pie just for you, right? But that's not how the bank teaches us to operate. How the bank teaches us to operate is when we get paid our pie or our income, right, every month, we explode that into our situation and we end up slicing the pie. If you got a bunch of people coming to a party, if you got 40 people coming to a party and you only have one pie, you're slicing that into little tiny slices. And so what ends up happening is when you have little tiny slices, it's different than eating a whole pie by yourself. If you got a little tiny slice and that's all you get because you're sharing it with everybody else, you're left hungry. You want more pie, right? And that's exactly what happens by the way we've been taught to bank. When we get our check, we put a little bit in checking, and we put a little bit in savings, and we put a little bit towards the mortgage, and a little bit towards the car, and a little bit towards the credit card, and a little bit, towards our 401k, and a little bit towards taxes, and a little bit over here, and a little bit over there, money market, CDs, all the things. And we've got, and each debt, if we're using loans, each debt is a new line item. So every time we get a new debt, we have a new line item, a new piece of pie that we're carving off every single month. And that just explodes into our situation and we're left hungry. Right? And so this is, if you've ever had that feeling or thought to yourself, I know I make more money than this, where does it all go? That's because of cash segmentation. Why does the bank want us to feel broke every month? Well, the reason is because if you have extra money, chances are you're going to pay down your debt faster. And if over the span of 30 years they can collect double to quadruple what you actually owe on your mortgage, they want you stretching it out that 40 or that 30 years, right? They don't want you paying it off in 5 or in 10. They want you stretching it out and giving them the maximum that they can possibly collect from you. So this is why cash segmentation is used against us, so that we feel broke, so that we're only paying those minimums every single month. So what we want to do is we want to get into a situation where we're slicing that pie the fewest number of times, right? The fewest number of times we can slice a pie is 0. So the key here is we want to get to a situation where our income and our debt is kept in the same place. Now, this is only possible if we can replace what we use our checking and our savings account for. Okay, so let's leave cash segmentation on the board. We'll come back to that. So why do we use checking and savings? Somebody come off mute and tell me why. What is the most important reason, the biggest reason that you use checking and savings? Don't be shy. All right,
well, I use mine because it's easy access. Just put the money in and swipe my card.
Bingo, right? It's easy. And I have a debit card that I can access it, right? And I've got checks that I can access it. And I got an ATM. I can pull cash out. I want to be able in my checking account to have a place where my job can just direct deposit into my account. I can put money in, and I want to be able to access that money and pull it out at any time. And we tend to use checking accounts in the short term, right? A checking account is more like a monthly, like we're gonna put some money in there, we're gonna use it through the course of the month, and then we're gonna replenish it next month or next paycheck. So it might be a 2-week cycle, it might be a 1-month cycle, but in the short term, we're wanting a safe place where we can put money in and where we can take money out. Now, with our savings account, what do we want there? Well, we want the same thing, but this is more of a long-term arrangement, right? So for long-term, we want a place where we can store our money long-term, and then if there's an emergency that happens, like a rainy day, or if there's an asset that comes along, like a rental property that we got to put a little down payment on or something, or short-term rental that we need to buy furniture for, we want to be able to take that money out. So same deal. We want to put money in and we want to take money out. So we need to be able to replace that functionality with something else, so that we can, because we can't store our debt in our checking account. That's a weird thing, right? Like we can't go get a car loan that just is our checking account. That doesn't exist. So those are two completely separate things. So we want to be able to have a different tool where we can not just keep cash, but we can also keep debt. Let's come back to that, because I want to talk a little bit more about why we use checking and savings. Can anybody think of any other reason other than I want a safe place, both long-term and short-term? I want a safe place to put my money and be able to access it when I need it. Any other reasons you could think of? And I know for some people they're like, well, I get 0.5% on my money in my savings account. Guys, inflation, averages per year at like 3.5%. So your 0.5% that you're getting, you're still losing money by keeping money in your checking and savings. So who was it that told us to keep our money in checking and savings? Why do we keep our money there? Well, if you trace it back, mom and dad did it, right? Grandma and grandpa did it. Susie Orman and Dave Ramsey told us to do it. So, and if you trace it back far enough, eventually the bank told you to do it. Now, this is very important. Did someone come on mute? Sorry. This is very important. This is very important to understand, guys. The bank is not a not-for-profit organization. They're not nonprofit. They are for profit. They're capitalist. In fact, go to any city anywhere in the world and you will see the tallest skyscrapers have bank names on them. They make a lot of money, and they make their money off of their customers, just like any other business in capitalism. Their customers are you. Now, luckily, capitalism comes with some checks and balances, right? They'd go out of business if they took too much advantage of their customers, if they weren't serving their customers. So, I'm not trying to paint the banks as evil here. They're capitalist, but you have to remember, and a lot of us are here because of real estate. And you've heard me say before, the smartest person in the deal always makes the most money. Well, how educated are we compared to the bank at banking? We have zero education in banking, right? And the bank invented banking. So, they're the smartest person in the deal. They're going to make the most money. So tenet number one of understanding your relationship with the bank is realizing that their job in this capitalist world that we live in, their job is to make money off of you. Okay, so it's our job to question and get educated around everything. So let's start with this idea of I need to put my money and store my money in checking and savings. So other than, they gave us the ability to have a liquid place to put cash, take cash out, the FDIC, the feds, they insure our money that's in our checking and savings accounts. It seems like a really great deal. However, the bank gets more benefit out of it. You see, the bank gets to use you like a line of credit, because the bank, how do I put this? The bank that the bank gets their money from. So, your Chase Bank relationship or your Wells Fargo relationship or whoever you bank with, the bank they get their money from is the Federal Reserve. And in order for them to borrow from the Federal Reserve, they need collateral. Now, this is exactly how they get their collateral, is your checking and your savings account. So if the bank has $10 billion, let's make this easy math for my brain, right? Let's say the bank has $1 billion. Out of all their customers, they have $1 billion in checking and savings accounts. And that's across all their customers. They can take that $1 billion, they can take it to the Federal Reserve, and they can get a loan for 10 times the amount. It's called, this process is called fractional banking. Look it up, get educated around it. And with fractional banking, they can get 10 times the amount from the Federal Reserve. And what do they do with that $10 billion that they just borrowed? So now they have a net of $11 billion bucks, right? Now the $1 billion they need to keep so that you can have access to it and be liquid. But what do you think they do with the other 10 that they borrowed from the Federal Reserve? They lend it to you and charge you an interest rate, right? Keeping your money in a cash basis on checking and savings is a big part. And then, getting those loans, the line items for your debt, and, slicing that pie up as many times as you can and shoving it everywhere in your respective situation every month. That is cash segmentation. You're going to feel broke. And so, when you want to buy a car, you're going to come back to the bank, probably the one you have a relationship with, and you're going to say, hey, lend me some money. They lend you the money that they got from borrowing your money that you didn't know about, because all you thought it was I'm just putting my money in my checking account, right? So they lend you that same money that they use as collateral to get the money, and then they charge you an interest rate on your car loan, on your house loan, on your student loan, on your credit cards, on all those different things, right? So here's what it breaks down to. The bank is using you like a line of credit. So the key to what we're going to talk about tonight is let's turn the tables on the bank. They've already provided us some ways that we can use them like a line of credit. Okay? So this understanding now that we have around banking and how the bank uses it has set up this situation and really kind of plugged us as ignorant consumers into this system that they've created, is all so that they can go get that money and lend it back to you and just keep compounding their interest, right, that they collect from you. So we've got to turn the tables on them. So coming back to the checking and savings, all we're looking for, the bank gets their fractional, we'll write this down, let's see. So the bank gets their fractional banking because of checking and savings. They're using your money as collateral at the Federal Reserve, right? But the only benefit we're looking for is a safe place to put money in and take money out. Now, we've seen this before. We've already talked about that tonight. A place where we can put money in and take money out. And in that context, it's already a place where we can keep debt. It's right here. Our line of credit. Right? And the beautiful thing is lines of credit are simple interest. Okay, so now if we have a situation where we can convert all of our debt over to simple interest versus amortized interest, we're going to bypass a lot of that interest that we're going to end up paying, right? Because here's how it works. If let's say we have a situation where we're making $5,000 a month, right? $5,000 a month is coming in. Now over here on the debt side, we've got, let's put debts up here. We'll do payments, our balance, value, and years. Okay. So if we have a mortgage that's, 200 grand and we've got 30 years left on that mortgage, our payment on a $200,000 mortgage, let's say 6%, is going to be about $1,200. Okay. Let's say we have a car loan at $600. Let's say we have a credit card at $600. The car loan, let's say we have $50K left. The credit card, let's say we have $12,000 in debt, and maybe that credit card has a limit of $15,000. Now let's come back up to the value of the home. So the value of the home, let's put that at $300,000, right? And let's say our car, we have 7 years left, and then most credit cards are either on a 4-year payoff or a 7-year payoff. 4-year payoffs are going to be usually balances that are under $10,000. And anything over $10,000, now this isn't a hard fast rule, but usually they're 7-year payoffs. So that minimum payment will, if you pay the minimum payment every month and you don't put anything else on that credit card, you treat it almost like a loan, it'll take you 7 years to pay. So you will pay interest for 7 years, right? And that's where it starts to kind of act like amortized interest a little bit. And it's interesting because the psychology of how we're taught to use a credit card, we almost treat it like it's a loan. Like we're taught like credit cards are scary. Don't use them. They're scary. They'll hurt you, right? When really it's because they can't collect as much interest. They can only charge you simple interest on a credit card. So the psychology, you're brainwashed with it. Don't use it. It's scary, right? You can get in trouble with it, and people do because they don't use them correctly. So we get into a hard situation, or temptation sets in, and we go buy a big screen TV on credit, that kind of thing, and we end up racking up debt. And then we treat it like a loan to pay it off, right? It's this thing that we set over in the distance, and we make the minimum payment, or maybe like an extra $50, or maybe even double payments towards it some months, right? And we're just paying it like it's a loan. And if you treat it like a loan, it's actually going to start acting like a loan. Because, if we're treating it like a loan, that's simple interest. If we're stretching it out over 7 years and we're only paying the minimum payment, that interest just kind of adds up over time, and it starts to act a lot like amortized interest. So, we've got to kind of change our mentality about lines of credit. A lot of you have heard me use this analogy before. It's like fire, right? Fire isn't inherently good, and it's not inherently bad. Fire is just a thing that exists, right? It's neutral in the universe. It can be something that can burn down your house. And it could be something that hurts you or even kills you. It could be fatal, right? But fire can also be something that heats your house when it's cold, and it can power your car. It can do a lot of, it can cook our food. It can do a lot of really good things. So really what it comes down to is fire is a tool. It's how we use it, right? And so, with that said, debt is the same thing. Debt is not inherently good or bad. Like, debt can totally be something. We all have stories, personal stories of ourselves or our friends or our family members that we've watched just destroy their financial futures with debt, with bad debt, right? And a lot of that it comes because none of us are really educated on how to use debt, right? And so we end up using it wrong. If you're not educated on how to use fire, if you're not educated on how to use a power tool, you're probably going to hurt yourself, and the same goes for debt. But if you use it from an educated standpoint and use it for good things, I see a lot of students. We're real estate investors, right? We leverage to buy assets. That's real estate, and that's good debt. As long as you're making more every month than what you're paying for the debt, you're cash flowing, that's an asset, right? Robert Kiyosaki defines that as an asset. Does it pay you more than it's costing you every month? That's an asset. If it doesn't, it's a liability. So we can actually use debt to build our empire. So debt is a tool, and that extends to lines of credit. Lines of credit are a tool. A credit card is not inherently good or bad. It's how you use it, and it's how educated you are around it, right? So with that said, if we kind of total this up here, we have $2,400 in debt payments every month. We have $262,000 in debt. Leverageability, which we'll come back to here in a sec, $315,000 between the value of the home and the limits on our credit cards. And then in the traditional method, one of the nice things is we pay off debt I can't think of the word. We pay off debt at the same time, right? It's paid off concurrently. So our debt, if we don't get any more debt, and this is our situation, our debt will take us 30 years to pay off. Because 7 years into that 30 years, the car will be paid off, the credit card will be paid off, and then another 23 years after that, the house will be paid off. So it'll take us 30 years total to pay off this debt. And then we have, of course, our non-debt related expenses. You've seen me refer to this as lifestyle, right? So our non-debt related expenses or our lifestyle, if that number is $1,200 a month, this is just a little average American family. And then, so our total output every month is $3,600 if we add the two together. So what we're doing is we're adding our debt service to our non-debt related expenses or our lifestyle, and that gives us this $3,600 a month expense. Now, let's talk about savings allocation for a second. So we go back to the concept that we've talked about here. If we're asking the bank or bank employees how to bank, they are going to tell us the way that is best for them. And it may even be naively, right? Because, let's be honest, you walk into a credit union and you got a bunch of, barely graduated high school 20-somethings, working there. They understand as much about banking as you do, and the training that they've received are from, upper management, middle management that work for the bank corporation. So they're really just taught the things to tell you, really. So it may even be naivete, but it trickles down from the top. And what they want at the top of the bank, what they want is for the bank to make money. That's priority number one. Priority number two is take care of our customers so they stay with us, right? But priority number one is make money. So if they're going to tell us, how to use savings and checking, how to control the flow of money, right? They tell us savings and checking, best for the bank. They're going to tell us how to store our debt, amortize loans, right? Best for the bank, not for us. So when we're going to talk about savings allocations, are those going to be, the recommendations they're going to make, are they going to be best for us or are they going to be best for the bank? And the answer is, of course, the same as always, it's going to be best for the bank, right? So when I'm talking about savings allocations, I'm talking about everything from 401ks, IRAs, money market accounts, CDs. By the way, money market accounts and CDs, they're just another deposit account. It's another checking and savings that the bank can use to go borrow money from the Fed, right? So really what they're paying you, they're able to get tenfold, and then charge you again when you want to get a loan on something. Or other customers, if you're savvy to it, you're not going to go get loans. Well, that's fine. They'll lend it out to other customers. So with savings allocation, they teach us one strategy. And I we've talked about this strategy before. It's called the accumulation strategy, right? And this is where I talk about building the nests, and we all understand accumulation strategies are finite, and that's usually the reason that I say don't use accumulation strategies. But I want to dive a little deeper into accumulation strategies tonight, because all of the ways that they tell us to save, obviously savings, we know their benefit, right? The savings account, checking, CDs, money market, that stuff. We know the benefit there. We've already talked about it. Contributions to your 401k. Guys, my first month, my first 3 weeks in my Renatus education, I watched a class by Matt Sorensen on self-directed IRAs and 401ks. And Matt explained that for most 401ks and IRAs, especially the traditional 401ks and IRAs, right? We'll set Roths aside for a second. But for traditional 401ks and IRAs, wait a second. No, that's wrong. No, let's talk about Roths. Sorry, I got it backwards. So with Roths, your taxable event is when you put money into that account, right? So as you contribute to that account, contributions from your paycheck, you're putting money in, though that money is taxable. You have to pay income tax on that money as you put it in. Now, once it's in there, it can grow to infinity. You can put $7,000 in, and if you're lucky enough, you could make $10 billion over the course of your career inside your 401k, and in a Roth account, no tax, right? That's completely non-taxable. So the taxable event is actually contributing. Now, but it goes further than that. We're also losing money when we have banks manage our retirement accounts, right? You may not realize we're paying Morgan Stanley, we're paying all these firms that have two names on them, Merrill Lynch, all these different firms. We're paying them every time there's a transaction made of some kind. They buy a mutual fund, they sell a mutual fund, they move things around. They charge us a commission for what's done, right? So we're just really kind of getting, after taxes are paid, after, and by the way, on traditional, it's when we pull it out. So we're still paying taxes on either side. But it's after taxes are paid, it's after commissions to the management company of these accounts are paid. We're kind of getting what's left. We're picking up the crumbs, right? And hopefully that grows over time. And, in the last 2 decades, I think people have lost money just as much as they've made money in traditional 401ks and IRAs, right? So that's kind of a farce. Like the way that we're taught to traditionally do it, it just, the bank's taking commissions on every transaction. The government's taking money. It's not the best way to do it. In fact, I've personally done strategies. I've watched students do strategies where they had solo Roth 401ks where they didn't contribute anything. You don't have to contribute anything. They didn't contribute. They set up the account. They didn't contribute anything. They went out and started using other people's money to acquire properties. Those properties were investments of the 401k. The title was held in the 401k, but no money was contributed. Now the 401k is actually funded because it owns assets, right? Using other people's money, equity partners, right? So the 401k now owns some rental properties, and all the cash in this Roth 401k that's coming in is growth tax-free. So self-directed Roth 401k, no contributions, which means no taxable event, right? Was able to use other people's money to acquire assets that then that net cash flow came in and was considered growth. And in a Roth, when you pull that out, there's no taxes. So there are better ways. My point in telling you this is there are better ways to use 401ks than what we're told, right? The way we're told is just best for the bank. But what ends up happening, if you add up what kind of your average corporate employee, your corporate drone is paying, using money market accounts, using retirement accounts, their contributions to their 401ks, their contributions to savings accounts, anywhere where we have savings allocations, it can be pretty significant. In this case, we'll put about $1,400 a month. And that's a couple $100 going over here, a couple $100 going over there, whatnot, right? But the problem is each one of these things is a piece of pie, including what we're putting in checking, what we're putting in savings. We're just slicing up this pie over and over and over again. Now, if we go back to that scenario where I talked about how, we're building a 401k that there were no contributions in, we just basically used the knowledge currency and the relationship currency, right? And we went and funded this 401k with assets using other people's money, partnering up, collecting cash flow, growing it, taking the cash flow tax-free in retirement. Much better way to do it. That's the better alternative. But it doesn't require us to actually shave off a piece of pie and every month from our cash flow and like throw it at that thing. So a smarter way, using your retirement account smarter is also going to contribute to this process of cash desegmentation, which is the direction we want to go. Right? So if our income is $5,000, and after we add all this up, our grand total output is $5,000. Add it up. You take your total output, which is a combination of your debt service and your non-debt related activities. That's $3,600. Then add your savings allocations to it, which are just other slices of the pie. You've got $5,000 in. So now you've got $5,000 coming in, $5,000 going out. Also savings allocations, things like health insurance, right? There's other options, lower premium, higher deductible with an HSA account, which by the way, HSAs, you can do that same strategy that I just talked about in the 401k to fund your HSA. Those are going to eliminate slices of the pie as well. So, but if you do the math here, $5,000 in, $5,000 going out, this is why this strategy makes us feel broke. $0 in cash flow is what that leads to. Okay. So this kind of sets up, kind of the average American, model here. And so really, there's a lot of different ways that we can do this. And some of you I've already showed this more advanced strategy to, but a lot of you haven't seen it yet. In our introduction videos and in the introduction workshop, we talk about how we can use credit cards to kind of, make utilize the velocity banking strategy and pay down. But if you have a house, if you have a mortgage, there are simple interest vehicles at the bank that we can refinance into, and we can start doing this strategy out of right away that will accomplish both sides of what we're trying to do. It will give us a simple interest vehicle that will allow us to desegment our cash every month. So for example, if I've got a HELOC over here, and let's say that this HELOC is at 7%, just for giggles. A home equity line of credit is simple interest, which means we could put money in and take money out at will, right? I have my little card here that I can go, use at Sam's Club if I want to, that's attached to my home equity. So let's say that they give us, $270,000 on our $300,000 house. They're willing to give us a $270,000 line of credit. Now, if we get a first position HELOC, we can actually refinance into that first position HELOC and pay off the old mortgage, eliminating one of the slices of pie, right? So now we've moved over $200,000 of house debt. We can now pay off our car. Look, we're just eliminating slices of the pie, right? Let's pay off the car with the HELOC, eliminate that slice of pie, move that car debt over here. We're not actually paying off the debt. We're just moving it all into the same vehicle. So 200, and now we're at 250,000. We put our credit cards over there. This is not to scale. We're now at 265, and we have this $5,000 worth of room that's open for assets and emergencies. Okay, the other thing we want to do is let's reevaluate there are better ways. I mean, for rainy days, I use velocity banking. For retirement, I use rental properties, right? And that might be rental properties that I own in an LLC. That might be rental properties I own in my HSA or in my 401k. But retirement rentals are the best way to build for retirement, not contributions to your 401k. And you're capped. I mean, it's like a $16,000. I don't know if that's changed. I don't contribute to my 401k, so I don't follow it. But it's like a $16,000 a year cap that you have on your 401k. That you're taxed on, either going in or coming out, and they're taking the bank's taking commission on, right? So we want to eliminate all of those accumulation strategies that we've been taught by the bank, because they're only servicing the bank. What we're getting left over after that is pennies, right? So if we're eliminating $1,400, that means our grand total becomes the 36. But we're also dumping, if we've dumped all of our debt into this new vehicle, we've also eliminated that $2,400, and we're left with $1,200 in non-debt related activities or lifestyle. Now, if we want to keep our lifestyle the same, let's just say we're going to keep that at $1,200 a month, right? So if we want to keep our lifestyle the same, now the only other debt service we have is our HELOC payment. So what's that going to be? Well, let's take a look at this. So pulling up my calculator here. Okay. All right. So remember, a HELOC is simple interest. So we're going to take our balance here of $265,000, and we're going to times that by our interest rate of 7%. Okay? And so that gives us, remember that's an annual interest rate, so that's how much interest we pay in a year. So we're running a monthly model. Let's divide that by 12. We're now $1,500 a month. Okay. So at $1,500 a month, and actually that's our first payment based on this. We can get more complicated than this. We'll just run the math on this, and this will kind of keep us square here. But as you pay down your HELOC, your payment is actually going to get lower and lower. So $1,500 will be the most expensive. Now. What we've done is we've consolidated our debt, and that has raised our cash flow, because now our total output is $1,500 plus $1,200. That puts us at $2,700. That's our new total, right? So $2,700 a month. That means we have a new cash flow. If we've got $5,000 coming in and $27 coming out, that gives us $2,300 a month in cash flow. Okay. Now, making the assumption that our interest payment is going to be $1,500 a month, which it won't, because every single month as we live velocity banking, that debt will continue to lower, which means our payment will continue to lower. So it'll actually be more conservative than this. We need, let's look back over here to cash segmentation, right? We need our debt and our income in the same place. We've successfully consolidated our debt into one simple interest vehicle. We got rid of the mortgage, we got rid of the car. Those were both amortized vehicles. We got rid of the credit card. That was already simple interest, but we moved it over to the HELOC because it's a lower simple interest rate, and it consolidates, which means that's a piece of pie that we don't have to throw to the credit card companies, right? So we're eliminating those slices of pie. Also, we're going to eliminate using the checking account, and we're going to eliminate using the savings account. All we wanted out of those was the ability to put money in and take money out, and we have that here in the HELOC. So what we're going to do is we're going to take our $5,000 a month, and every month we're just going to dump it right into the HELOC. Now, how do I pay for my gas? With this. Instead of your debit card, just use the HELOC card. This is your new checking account, right? How do I pay for my phone? Here you go. How do I, what if there's an emergency? Emergency room takes credit cards. We can use this for everything. Anywhere we're using a debit card, with the exception of Winco. Sorry. You can use this. So now we just replace in our wallet, we replace our debit card with our HELOC card. That's our new debit card, right? And now what we've done is we've completed the cash desegmentation. We are now keeping our income and our debt in the same place, which means we've eliminated the slices of pie. We're back to the party of one. You've got a full pie and it's just you at the party. You can eat the whole pie, right? So now we're attacking our debt with the power of the entire pie. So we can subtract every time we get paid. We can subtract that $5,000 paycheck from our debt balance, but then over the course of the month, $2,700 comes out. And then we get paid again, right? $5,000 and $2,700 comes out. Now here's the cool thing. Because it's a line of credit, as we pay down this debt, it opens up room, right? Paying it down, paying it down, paying it down. Okay. Eventually we get it all the way paid off. Okay. And now all we have to do is take the original balance to figure out how often. And here's the cool thing. There is discipline that's required with velocity banking. Just like with all other, financial strategies, there's discipline. Like, the traditional method, you need discipline to pay down extra. You actually have to physically move your extra money from your savings over to your mortgage to pay off debt. That requires an incredible amount of discipline, especially when we're on a cash segmentation basis and because mortgages are one directional. Once you throw that money at the mortgage, it's gone. And so that's baked into it from the bank, the psychology of, well, what if I pay this extra $1,000 towards my mortgage and there's an emergency tomorrow? I better leave this in my savings. Now we're not paying off debt, we're paying more money in interest, right? So there's that baked in psychology of it. But with velocity banking, we don't need that part of the discipline because the extra money that's left over, the $2,300 a month that's left over that we're not spending anymore, as long as we keep our lifestyle the same, that $2,300 a month that's left over, it's left over sitting on top of our debt in the HELOC. We don't have to change anything if this is how we're already behaving. It just sits on top of the debt. So if this is our consistent behavior, if this is our, let's call it average behavior, because some months there's emergencies, some months we make a little more money, right? So, but if it averages out to this, then each month our debt will reduce by $2,700, or excuse me, $2,300. So in order to calculate how many months this will take, just simply take your balance of debt, which is $265,000, divide it by the extra money that will sit on top of it, or cash flow, every single month. And that's 115 months in this case. Which, if we divide that by 12, is 9.6 years. Now that's pretty impressive. We literally cut this down by a third. They had get back to my pen here. They had 30 years of debt, right? And they kept their lifestyle the same. They kept their income the same. All they did was change their behavior a little bit, and they reduced that debt from 30 years down to 9.6 years. And the reason is because we bypassed a lot of that amortized interest, and we behaved in a way where our extra money would automatically, first of all, we eliminated a lot of the ancillary things we're paying for, right? By eliminating those slices of the pie. And then that extra money that we picked up by doing that, we behaved in a way where that money just sat on top of that debt every single month. That's the mechanics of how this works. Now, I want to dive a little bit deeper into this. And I'm going to change colors to do this because this is getting kind of messy a little bit. I'll change to red for a second. So you'll notice as we pay down the debt here, you're seeing it kind of go down sharply as we get paid. And then, we don't spend all the money day one usually. So over the course of the month or over the course of the 2 weeks, that kind of ramps back up a little bit, right? Now, here's the thing let's talk about how simple interest vehicles work. So simple interest is actually an abbreviated form of what simple interest is actually called, and that's called daily simple interest. They refer to it as daily simple interest because the interest that you owe the bank is calculated daily. So your interest rate here, your 7% interest rate, that is an annual interest rate. So if you want to know what your daily rate is, you're just going to take your 7% interest rate and you're going to divide it by 365 days. And technically in the financial world it's 360 days, but we won't get too messy there. So divide your 7% by 360 days, that's your daily rate. So the bank takes a snapshot of your average daily balance every single day. They times it by your daily rate. That's how much you owe them daily. That adds up over the course of the month. And then every month they send you an invoice and they say, here's how much interest you owe us. So we can actually take this a step further, right? We can manipulate this not just monthly, not just every 2 weeks. We can manipulate this daily. And there's a tool that I like to use to do that, and it's over here. In conjunction with my HELOC, I like to use, I've got one right here, I like to use my American Express Gold, right? There's my American Express Gold. I like to use that card, and here's the thing about my American Express Gold. It's a charge card. I have to pay the balance in full every month, and I like that because then I don't accidentally rack up a balance over here, and I've also got my HELOC over here. Now I'm slicing the pie again, right? I have to pay my Amex off every month. So, but what that allows me to do is instead of living out of the HELOC day by day and having this daily increase over time over the course of the month, every month, I can actually get more of a straight line. So every day, until payday, I'd be charged a little bit more in interest every day, and then I get paid again, right? Because it's a daily snapshot. I can put this more to like a straight line, where it's actually like flat throughout the course of the month. So, and then it spikes because I pay off my Amex, and then goes down, right? So what I do is I put all of my charges on my American Express. Let me grab it. I learn better with visuals, so I assume everybody else does too. So I put my charges on my American Express. My American Express, like I said, I've got to pay it in full every single month. I got a business one and I got a personal one. Okay, and my business one, I put all of my business transactions on my business American Express. I put all my personal transactions on my personal American Express, and then I use my points. My points accounts are linked. Here's the cool. We're going to talk a little bit about points. My points accounts are linked between my business and my personal. I use my points to pay off my personal Amex every month. That means that I'm distributing. I don't have to distribute as much to myself personally, which is a taxable event, right? Every time I distribute to myself personally from my business, I have to pay income tax on that. And so if I'm racking up money on my Amex, that's more money I have to distribute to myself to be able to pay off my personal Amex. I'm paying that with points. Credit card points are tax-free money, which is awesome. So I'm using my business points to pay my personal Amex, and then I'm using my HELOC to actually pay my business American Express. Now, there's some accounting that goes into that. That's very high level. But what that does, a little bit of tax strategy there for you. But mostly why I wanted to bring that up is because instead of getting this, rapid drop on payday and then kind of a diagonal rise over the course of the month, I'm racking up my expenses on my American Express, and that's leaving the balance static throughout the month. And then a day before I get paid on my HELOC, I pay off my Amex using the HELOC, which spikes it for a day. That's all. So I'm only charged that interest for one day instead of it slowly rising over the course of the month or slowly rising over the course of every 2 weeks. And then that money comes in from my job. I get paid again, or my business, or whatever I'm doing. I get paid again, and that drops. So it's only spiked for a day, and then it drops again. So we can actually fine tune this strategy day by day, month by month, to be able to get that interest down even further using the daily simple interest attribute of simple interest lines to our advantage, right? So what we've done here so far is we've taken and we've dug into and gained a deeper understanding of every type of banking instrument that we have available to us. and we've kind of cherry picked and used different instruments to create a strategy that actually benefits us in a way more than it benefits the bank. Now, is the bank still going to get interest? Yes, they are. Right? The bank is still going to get interest on their money, and that's fine. But because they're going to be getting $1,500 a month, at least on that first month, that'll go down every single month instead of $2,400 every month from us, right? But if we do the math here, why is it that it takes us then 30 years on? And guys, I mean, a 6% mortgage versus a 7% HELOC. This is what I'm talking about. These aren't apples to apples. We can't compare a 6% mortgage to a 7% HELOC because one's simple interest and one's amortized interest. Let me show you what I'm talking about. If we take the payment on the mortgage, it's $1,200. Okay, plug that into the calculator. $1,200. We times that by 12 months. That's how much, $14,400. That's how much we will pay in a year, right? And then we times that by the number of years that we have left on our loan. That's 30 years. So times that by 30 years. On our $200,000 loan, we will pay $432,000. That is more than double, right? Double is about 4%. So when you're at 8%, which is where we're at kind of right now, people are getting 8% mortgages on things, right? That's quadruple. So, and it just compounds, right? So that's amortized interest. We are bypassing paying the bank more than double on their interest just simply by using this strategy and using simple interest instead of amortized interest. So we talked about, we kind of walked through the mechanics of why this works. We walked through cash segmentation. We walked through compound and simple interest. And we walked through the element of daily simple interest and how we can kind of use that to our advantage, right? Now, one of the things I will suggest, again, going back to these credit cards, HELOCs don't tend to have rewards programs comparable to what credit cards have. Credit cards, there are some amazing rewards programs out there. I mean, I've done entire European vacations for two on just credit card points. I've paid off, mostly I use it to pay off my personal American Express or whatever card, and avoid additional taxation. There's so many strategies that we can use. We should have that element. And I know it makes it a little more complicated than just straight using the HELOC. And we've got to be consistently paying it off every month so we're not accruing interest in two areas, right? But as long as we pay it off before the statement period ends, no interest is applied on the credit card. And we get all the points. Those points that's free money. Utilize the points. Free money. Easiest money you'll make. It's funnest money you'll make. Go out and, have a shopping spree. Get the point. Just kidding. Don't spend your money on stupid things. But, use it to go out and invest in real estate. Use it to buy furniture in an Airbnb. Use it to, to pay your property manager. Use it to pay your utilities on your rental properties. Whatever the case might be, use those credit cards, get those points, pay it off with your HELOC, and pay off the card in full with the HELOC the day before you get paid. Spikes for a day, and we avoid all that interest. When we use it in this way, we can really fine tune it. You will always, now here's an important point. You will always, if you have debt, you will pay interest, right? This isn't a complete elimination of having to pay interest. This is just minimizing the amount of interest we have to pay. And in doing so, in this case, we save 20 years. That's 240 months of $2,400 a month. Imagine what you can do with $2,400 times 240 months. That's a lot of money, right? I'm not going to do the head math, but that's a lot of money you could go out and be buying assets with, right? That you could be doing smarter things in your life with than paying the bank absorbent and ridiculous and ugly amounts of interest. So let's open it up. So I've kind of hit a break point here in my pontification. So if you guys want to come out and ask any questions, if you want to dive into any of the kind of minute parts, or if you need clarity on any of this stuff, come off mute. Let's talk about it. Let's dive in a
Mitch, I
little
have
bit.
a question.
Yeah, Tim, what's up, man?
Can, if you, let's say you don't have a home, can you
Okay.
use credit card itself and acting as a HELOC?
Yes, yes, absolutely. So that was one of the things I mentioned. So we're doing kind of a deeper dive, right? We're doing kind of a more advanced version of the strategy. I know some of you have already shared this with, but the simple form of velocity banking is, look, this family already has a line of credit. They already have the tool, right? You can start, and a lot of students when they start out doing velocity banking, I'm like, you're in a position where we can do the advanced way, but let's practice it on smaller things first, right? Let's practice it on these credit cards first for a little while, for 2, 3, 4 months, so you can kind of get a feel for the flow, right? So we can get through that kind of awkward phase of trying something new, so you can kind of start to see the results of how it starts to really benefit you. And then let's move over to this more advanced strategy. If you don't own a home and you can get a credit card, that's a line of credit as well. And then, over here on the HELOC side, we have the advantage of, hey, we've got this huge line of credit that we could just dump all of our debt into and do one cycle. But really, even if you had just a $15,000 credit card or even a $5,000 credit card, right? Whatever amount, like, you can just do this in chunks. Doing $5,000 at a time, granted it's more management, it's going to take you a little more time, a little more attention, but just doing move $5,000 on the credit card, throw your check at it, pay it down. Move $5,000 more at the credit card, pay it down. Right? You're getting the points, you're paying it down, and you're just balance transferring, every couple months or whatever to get that paid down. In the case of $5,000 a month in and a $15,000 card, it might be every 3 to 6 months that you're going to balance transfer another 15 grand over and just continue to work that down. We call that the chunking method. And the HELOC method, we call that the flip method, because really you're just flipping all of your debt into one big account and then using one cycle to pay that down versus multiple cycles that you'll need to do in the chunking method. The debt really, the time frame that it takes to pay it down really should be about the same. There may be a little variance in that. There's going to be a lot of factors that will affect that math. But really it should be very similar. You're still going to get the acceleration. And guys, this strategy, I've put it up against, the snowball strategy, Dave Ramsey's snowball strategy. I put it up against the double payment strategy. I put it up against, and I will continue. I stand by this because I've never been bested in this debate, right, with this particular strategy. This consistently, A, pays off debt faster, and B, keeps cash liquid and very rarely, if ever, really, have I seen a scenario where this doesn't equal or beat any other strategy that's out there. So, good question, Tim. Yes, absolutely, you can use credit cards. You can use any line of credit. The example we used tonight was a HELOC, but you can use any line of credit, including credit cards.
Thank you.
Yeah. Any other questions? Let's open this up. Anybody out there that's using velocity banking or has used velocity banking that has experience? Tim, have you had experience or any loved ones that have used velocity banking and have a story to tell?
Without question, actually, and the reason I brought up the credit card one is because I didn't catch that when I first started the education, that I could do that. And I had just moved here from Los Angeles and didn't have a house yet.
Yeah.
And I applied it to the credit card using when I was buying my items for my Airbnbs and whatnot. And absolutely, it works. Because you're not getting charged the full interest rate because you still have that float time in there. And I luckily had an incredible rate and still have it on the credit card that the credit union gave me of 10%.
Yeah, you bring up a good point. You bring it because you're not, you kind of hit a point that I glazed over, and that is you're not paying the full interest rate. See, here's the thing. If let's go back to kind of this model here, right? If you're doing what the bank trains you to do, and that is pay the minimum payment, right? And most of that is going to be interest, maybe a little bit of principal that will pay it off over a 7-year period. Then what you're seeing in your credit card account is, I'm running out of room here, but what you're seeing is if you got 12K balance, and you want to work that down to zero, you're really, I mean, when you make your payment, you're only getting little tiny, downward steps towards that take you 7 years to kind of pay this thing off, right? Because you're only throwing $600 a month at it. And keep in mind, like, this simulation that we ran, it was the same on both sides. Same income, same lifestyle on both sides, right? The difference was the amount of cash flow that we're able to free up by consolidating everything, and by using simple interest vehicles. But even credit cards, like at 21%, you're legit paying 21% on your balance, on the daily rate, which doesn't go down very much because you're making the minimum payments, right? Doesn't go down very much. And so it's stretching out over 7 years. You're paying 21% 7 times on that debt by stretching it out 7 years, right? But with velocity banking, you're not getting little tiny downward movement. You're far exceeding. I mean, look at the difference here. A minimum payment of $600 versus throwing $5,000 a month at your debt. And if this is kind of where you're at on the scale, if that's what your month looks like, in the graph, your debt is reducing by $5,000 a month in this family's example, right? This hypothetical person here, and it's staying down. If we're layering it with like a charge card that we get points on, it's staying down for the whole month, right? So it's significantly decreasing. So in comparison to the traditional method, we're getting an effective interest rate, because where would we be month 2 if we started at $12,000, we paid our $600 payment, most of that was interest, let's say reduced by $100, right? So if that's our control, there's the traditional method. Over here, it's at $12,000. We threw $5,000 in, and it stays there for most of the month, and then has a net decrease of $2,300 when it's all said and done. In comparison to that, what's our effective interest rate? It's significantly lower because the balance is lower. We're being charged on a much lower balance than we are comparing it to the traditional method. I hope that makes sense. That was a little convoluted. I don't know if I explained that right. But comparing the two side by side, your effective interest rate is much, much lower than the 21% on a credit card, even if that's your stated interest rate. We can kind of look at over the course of 9.6 years at 7%. It'd be hard to. We'd have to kind of graph that, huh? No, we can take the average. So the average is going to be 750 times 115 months. So if we take the average payment, which is going to be half of that, because it goes down, the payment goes down with the balance, times 115 months that it takes to pay off, 86,000. I'm kind of spitballing here, so I might be doing the math wrong, but I'm just playing with it. Let's look at this. So $86,000 divided by 265,000, and then divided by 9.6. Yeah, we have an effective interest rate of 3%, 3.39. An effective interest rate. So our effective interest rate is actually lower than what our quoted interest rate is. And all I did was I took the average payment, which $1,500 is our starting point, 0 is our ending point. So if you average those two, that's 750. I took that, times it by our 115 months right here that it took, times that number. It was like 86,000 times that number. Divided that number by 9.6 years, and that gave me our effective interest rate of 3.39. So even though our HELOC's stated interest rate is 7%, our effective interest rate after all is said and done, was only 3.39 because of the accelerated debt pay down of the strategy. So that's pretty awesome, and that's a good point, Tim. Anybody else have any stories they'd like to share? I want to hear from some of our students that have been doing velocity banking a little bit longer. I know Scott and Alicia just kind of started on it, and I don't know if you guys have seen any real success with it yet. I know you've been doing it just a couple months. What about Judy? Do you have a fun velocity banking story you can share? I know you got a fun tax story. I use it all the time. But do you guys have any fun stories about velocity banking?
I don't know if I used. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Yeah, I don't know if I used it correctly, but yeah, we paid our car out in like 20 months.
Oh, wow. What was
Yeah.
when you started using it? You paid it off in 20 months. When you started using it, what was your what were you projected to pay it off in?
40 months.
40 months.
Yeah.
Wow. So you cut the time in half.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Good deal. Looking
Yeah.
through to see if there's anyone else I can.
That's the one we did with velocity banking.
I love it. That's so
And
awesome.
we are not really great at it like you, but yeah.
Sure. Well,
We used the little knowledge we had taking our essentials, and that's what we did. Yeah, but our taxes, yes, that was the best one.
I love it. I love it. That's
Mhm.
awesome. Any other questions? Any other thoughts, stories, comments that we want to share? We can wrap it up here. If you guys are like, my brain hurts already, that's fine too. Sometimes we need a rest, right?
Yes, I did put a question in there.
Kathy.
I wanted to think of something. Yeah.
Sorry, I'm
I don't
running.
know.
Meili's at a retreat tonight, so I'm running the show by myself. So I'm having a hard
Okay.
time managing the chat. But I'm glad you came off mute.
Gotcha.
Let's talk about it.
Okay, this is a little off topic, but it does circle back to a HELOC, and I have a question about that as well.
Okay.
Okay, I am currently at a house right now as we speak over in North Carolina at the beach. I have a woman that has a house here that is completely paid off. She desperately needs to sell it as quick as possible. She got herself, I looked at her contract, it's with a wholesaler for a price that doesn't make sense. It's what she wanted in price, which is definitely discounted from what it could retail for if it were to be fixed up. And basically, they're really just going to be making commissions off of it. Probably, I mean, if they're able to flip it, about 15,000. But then that means that they have to retail it out, basically. So the house is worth if it were fixed up and it needs. Let's see, I did the numbers here. It's going to need approximately, and this is I'm going high in case, it could be less, but I'm going real high just in case I come across another problem. But I would say 15,000 to fix. If you take off the 15,000 in or 15.6 actually in commissions, the house is worth 260, so that comes out to 234.4. And then you've got closing costs, and I put in 3 for that. Is there a way for her to get out of that contract, because she signed it on the 11th of January and it's for 75 days, and they put in their name, the name of the company or assignee, and they have it as a purchase contract that will be closing in 75 days. Now, if I wanted to do this for my own personal residence, is there a way to circumvent this or not?
To circumvent the contract, the wholesale contract that she signed?
Correct.
There's probably, it depends on the contract, and it might need a lawyer looking at it, but in the contract there should be a section titled something along the lines of seller's right to cancel. And that will outline the reasons you can cancel and the reasons you can't cancel the contract. So I know in the Utah RAPC, for example, there's a whole section, seller's right to cancel. And it talks about when the seller can cancel, and basically it's buyer's default, right? Is the only reason. Usually, if she's already signed the contract, it's probably going to be pretty tough for her to change her mind. However, each contract is unique, so you'd have to look into. You'd really have to kind of read through the contract to look for those loopholes that she can take advantage of.
Okay, look, it's a 2.5-page contract. It's pretty basic, pretty simple. She put down a 1 penny as what is it called? Earnest money. Earnest money.
Yep.
Yeah, it's just 1 cent.
So is she the buyer or is she the seller?
My friend, she's actually the cousin of my friend. She's a seller.
She's the seller. Yeah. So it'd be seller's right to cancel is what she needs to look at. But I'd read the whole contract. If it's only 2.5 pages, chances are you probably do have some loopholes. I've seen 70-page contracts from wholesalers before. So that's going to be pretty basic. But yeah, if you can, so let's say that you can and that you want to go buy that house for, for your personal residence. What's the question? What's the question there?
The question there would be, okay, I would have to look at several different options. One is, putting it into my son's LLC, having him do basically a deed transfer, where we'd have to do some creative financing because we don't have the cash to give her at this point in time.
Okay.
So I'm thinking, because I've done this in the past, so I did 2 wraparounds, that I was able to refinance it once we can show that we owned it. It has to be seasoned at least 6 months. So, we were thinking, okay, what if the corporation does it's not called a HELOC. What is the name of that other one that you use?
Collateralized business line of credit. A C block, a collateralized business line of credit. Yeah.
Business line of credit. Okay, yeah, because that's what my son mentioned it, and I said, I think that's it. Yeah, I knew it started with a C.
Yeah.
If we did something like that, in the meantime, giving her enough money, because she has some other issues, health issues, and she's, living with her cousin. Her cousin has been spending her money helping her get back on her feet because she had some surgeries, blah blah blah. So she's going to need her money back as soon as fast as possible. So I was thinking possibly we could make the payments until we get the seasoning in, and then we can turn around and redo it, and then they can get all their cash out. That's a possibility I'm thinking of, and I don't know if that's something that an LLC can do.
So you're looking at an LLC getting a C block. And cash and for an acquisition on the property. So correct. I don't think I haven't found a bank yet that will do a C block on an acquisition. You have to acquire it through some other means, including seller financing, as long as you move.
Well, no, not as a purchase, as a refinance.
Yeah, refinance. Yeah, you can do that.
Yeah. Because if we have her do the deed transfer with a note on the property.
Yeah, just do it subject to.
And then well, there is no subject to because there is no note on the property.
Oh, she's got to pay it off. So seller fine. Yeah, okay, I got you. Yeah, so like an all-inclusive trust deed. Yeah, deed the property over. A note and a deed of trust.
Well, she would have a note. We would have to give her a note to do that, right?
Yep, a note and a deed of trust. And
deed of trust.
The title will be yours, and then you can take it to the bank. Like you said, you may, depending on the bank, this isn't banking law. You don't have to season things. But some banks like you to season it.
Everyone I talk to out here needs to season at least 6 months seasoning.
There you go. So season it 6 months. Take it to the bank and refinance out into a collateralized business line of credit. So with that said, does your LLC have the credit? I mean, do you have it done in some Bradstreet number? Have you been working on your corporate credit?
We've been working on it. It's fairly new, but it already has one house in it now.
Oh, perfect.
He's got a series LLC. Yeah, he's got a series LLC. He's working on a second one right now, and then this would be a third.
Yep, totally.
He's got another one that he can't.
So Maeli and I did something similar to that with our series LLC, right? Which is our holdings company. It owns all of our rental properties. And we took one of those properties, got a C block on it, and now that is our holdings company velocity banking tool, right? So we actually are running velocity banking in
Oh,
each individual business and for our personal life. And so we have
gotcha.
multiple lines of credit that we do that out of. It's a little more advanced, right? Not everybody needs,
Right.
3 or 4 different velocity banking, scenarios in their life. Some people just need one. Some people need just two, right? One for their personal, one for
Hmm.
their business.
Right.
So, but that particular account in this scenario you're talking about could potentially become the velocity banking tool for your son's holding company
Right.
for the LLC,
Oh my goodness. Yes, you're right.
right?
Okay, that
And
makes
then
total
and
sense.
then you're using that to pay off the mortgages on the rental properties, which is, in my
Right.
opinion, I mean, this is awesome when we're talking about personal finances, but where the real
Hmm.
power, where millions and millions of dollars in interest gets melted away, is
Hmm.
as you start to acquire assets, and we leverage to do that, right? As you start to acquire
Hmm.
assets and then use velocity banking to pay off the leverage, to de-lever the
Right.
assets, right? So
Well, that's what I had in the
to
back
pay
of
off the
my mind.
mortgages.
I'm thinking, and then I could use it as a tool for more properties.
Yep, exactly. Until and you're in growth mode, right? We continue to pay it down. You're in growth mode, which means you're using the room that you're creating on the HELOC or the C block, on the line of credit,
Hmm.
right? To continue to go out and
Hmm.
acquire. So you're kind of keeping it at max. You're paying it down a little bit until there's room to go acquire something, and then you're maxing it back out, and then paying it down and acquiring the next one and maxing it back out. Until you
Hmm.
decide, hey, let's run the math. I'm 10 years from paying this thing off. I want to retire in 10 years. Let's now go into
Hmm.
debt paydown mode. And at that point, you stop acquiring properties. And the way that
Hmm.
you continue to increase your cash flow is by paying off the leverage, by delevering these properties, by accelerating the payoff on the mortgages.
Right.
So there's kind of two sides to it. You can continue to build equity, and build cash flow by acquiring, or you can
Hmm.
build equity and build cash flow by paying off debt, right?
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
when you're in growth mode in your business, and in your life, continue to acquire. When you're like, hey, I'm winding things down, I'm getting close to retirement. This requires some planning. It can't be like, hey, I want to retire tomorrow. Let's pay off all the debt, right? Because then you got to sell some properties. You don't want to do that. That's taxable. You start to delever. You start to pay off that mortgage interest, and you do it inside of your holdings company, your LLC that owns those rental properties, so that it's not a taxable event, so that you can mitigate.
Okay.
Well, I should say, so that it's not an income taxable event. You can mitigate as much of that as possible.
All right. Okay. All right. Thanks.
Yeah, yeah. I hope that's helpful. Good luck with that. That sounds like
Yeah.
a fun deal to
I
go out and
actually,
negotiate.
yeah, that sounds great. Thank you.
You got it, guys. We're at half past the hour. I hope this was valuable to you guys. I'd love your feedback. Let me know. Shoot me a text. Let me know what you're thinking, and if this was something. If velocity banking is, I know we don't focus on it a ton on this call. We might hit it like once a quarter, twice a year, kind of thing. But I want to be, Mailey and I both want to be providing, the value that you guys are looking for. So let us know. If you got requests. I know, Mark Marshall the other day, he's like, hey, can we play more of that Deal or No Deal? Absolutely we can, right? I want to know what you guys want to do. So give us feedback. We're always interested in providing value for you, on this coaching call every Wednesday. In the meantime, don't forget about our live in-person mastermind tomorrow. At the same time, Maylee's running the mastermind. I'm, running the meeting for new guests. So if you've got somebody you're like, hey, this stuff could change their life too, bring them down. Put them in the room with me while you're hanging out in the mastermind with Maylee. I'd love to chat with them. And don't forget about nationals. You want to get your tickets scheduled right away, guys. That's all we have for you today. Thank you so much. I hope you guys have a fantastic week. We will be back every single Wednesday at 7 p.m. So mark your calendars. And until next week, stay happy, stay healthy, stay hungry to go out and do some real estate. I love you all. We'll see you next week. Thanks, guys. Bye bye.